Hello, hello, blissful parents. Michelle Abraham, your host here today. You guys, I am so excited. What a delight we have today. We have Rosalind Sedacca with us here today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Rosalind. But first, let's just say hi. Hi, Rosalind. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, well, we're so happy that you are here with us too, because you have got a wealth of information for us. And I know that's going to land so well in our parents' ears right now. Rosalind is recognized as the voice of the child-centered divorce. So she is a divorce and co-parenting coach and founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network, which provides advice, programs, coaching, and other valuable resources for parents who are facing, moving through, or transitioning after divorce. And what I love about the work that you're doing, Rosalind, is that it's really centered around the kids. And so today we're really going to dive into how parents can actually separate and or divorce, but really have it not be that focused on ruining your kids, right? And I don't want to say this in a very light way, but don't let your children pay the price for your divorce. Is creating that child-centered solution. So that's what we want to talk about today, and that's where we're going to dive in. And I know as parents of school-age kids, it's been a tough couple of years, and I think it's ripped open some band-aids in a lot of families that, now it's time to make some decisions or, start thinking about changing things up. So Rosalind, can you just share with us, what's been your experience over the last few years of what's happening in families post-pandemic as we're kind of coming out of that last couple of crazy years?
Yes, so many people's lives have been torn asunder in so many ways, and it's affected the relationships and marriages in very dramatic ways. People schedules different, staying at home in times when they were never before. It's aggravated a lot of issues, and a lot of marriages have fallen apart over the last couple of years, which is dramatically impacting everyone in the family, and especially the children, because divorce is always tough. And when you combine it with the health and medical challenges and everything else going on, it's been very dramatic. The courts have been closed for almost 2 years, and so a lot of people who were in the midst of custody issues and divorce issues had to find other outlets for getting solutions and resolution for them. So it's been challenging on a multitude of dimensions, and I'm so glad we're discussing this.
Absolutely. And what I didn't share with our audience is that you're actually the author of a book called How Do I Tell the Kids About the Divorce? And it's kind of like a storybook guide to preparing your children with love. So can you just start there for a minute? Give us a couple of really great tips for parents.
Yes, and this is something that I did with my own son when I had my divorce after close to 20 years of marriage, and he was 11 years old, and I put off the divorce for a long, long time because I didn't want to mess my son up. And finally, he was showing symptoms of stress, headaches, and other things. And I realized that living in a house where there was tension and conflict is not healthy. And I needed to make the decision to get the divorce. And then, of course, I was so concerned about the impact on him. And I came up with this idea at 4 o'clock in the morning after weeks of sleepless nights and implemented it. And I created a storybook. Back then, it was a scrapbook where I put family photos, pictures of happy times, vacations, and holidays, and birthdays, and all of those pictures that you accumulate. And I wanted to realize that there was a past, there was a present, which right now may not be feeling so good for everyone in the family, but there's going to be a future. And the most important message for parents to present to children when a divorce is imminent or a separation is that there's going to be happy times ahead again. And both of the parents are working to make that happen. And that's very, very important, to get both parents as aligned as possible in agreeing that regardless of how we feel about one another in our romantic relationship, we both have the children that we love and we want to do best by them. And if that's the case, then they can create a much more positive and a divorce that's going to be actually better for everyone in the family and a future that's better. So what we do is I wrote text that is customized age appropriate, and parents will fill in the blanks and customize it with information about their family and their kids' names and all of that. And then once they do that, they put that text into a scrapbook or a photo album, a Print-A-Pics photo album, one of those, and the pictures and the text together create a storybook. And you present it to the children at the time of this difficult conversation about breaking the divorce news. And the children can read it along with you, and hopefully both parents are there to have this conversation, because it's much more supportive for the kids when both parents are in alignment about this.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids can then reread that storybook again and again in the days and weeks and months to follow, getting these positive messages so that they feel that this is not out of control and that life is going to get better for them. And that's why this concept works so well.
Oh, that's awesome. I can imagine. I was just visualizing that as you were sharing it. And like, I can imagine how much less stressful that would be for the kids to receive the news in that way, rather than how I've seen it been delivered in the past or heard about it being delivered. Yeah.
It also becomes a script for the parents because it's already written, so they don't have to flub around about what to say. And, oh, I forgot to mention that. There's 5 key messages that every parent needs to relay, and all of those messages get conveyed that way. So it's a very sound principle, and it works very effectively. And we've had wonderful results with parents around the world.
I bet. That's amazing. Now, my husband and I both have siblings that have been divorced, and they both have kids around the same age too. So, you can see how, the first few years are rough, and then it gets better and it gets easier. And then you can see everyone's happiness kind of come back as their future kind of changes. And, some of them for like the much better, and so it's interesting to see that evolution over a few years of, kids going through that. And it's gotta be so tough for the kids, I can imagine, and tough for the parents, tough for everybody, just kind of navigating through this. But what a great support tool this is to really do it in a way that's loving instead of in a way that's just like rips their lives apart, right?
Exactly. The big question is, do I love my children more than I may hate or dislike my ex? And if you say that, then there's hope that you can put together a positive, less conflictual divorce, much more agreeable and much more cooperative. And that sets the stage for the future. And it also, we have to remember that every parent is a role model. So it gives children a role model for how to handle difficult situations in life, and to do it with maturity and with love and respect, as opposed to some of the headlines we see of divorce done wrong that creates so much stress and aggravation for everyone in the family, and especially the kids, because the kids are always innocent.
Yeah, they're the bystanders, right? So although a lot of them, I'm sure they can take it on themselves as like, feeling like it's their fault or they did something wrong, I'm sure. So when do you want to be involved in this with a family? Is this something that you start working with families before they decide to get divorced, or is it like after or during that you work with them?
That's a great question. The earlier I can work with them, the better the results are, because I help parents eliminate so many of the common mistakes that we too often see. They don't have to happen if parents just get an insight about the consequences of making some of these dangerous divorce decisions. And so they can work together and things can be very smooth because they're aware of the mistakes to avoid. For example, you don't never want to be bad-mouthing your ex to your children. Children love both parents. And when they hear either parent saying something bad about the other parent, it hurts them, it harms them, and it puts them on the defensive, and they don't know which side to support. It's a very uncomfortable situation. So you never want to be doing that, and you never want to be using your children as confidants. It's so tempting to tell your kids, if your mom didn't have this affair, if your dad wasn't an alcoholic, we wouldn't be having the divorce, and try to get the kids on your side. But children, even teens, don't have the brain capacity to comprehend the sophistication of adult relationships. It's hard enough for us as adults to
Yeah.
handle relationships. These children can't fix or change it. And it puts pressure on them emotionally and psychologically to be caught in the middle, to know adult information. So we never confide in them information that's not within their age level. And we talk to them in a way that they're feeling safe and secure. So it's very important to remember that. Also, it's crucially important never to argue around the kids. And of course, that happens so often. Even within earshot, even if you're closing the bedroom door and you're fighting there, the kids hear it. I remember with my own parents, hearing them fighting at night. It's very hurtful and damaging, and it changes who they are, because they're helpless to do anything to fix the situation. So you want to take your battles away from the kids and give them as much positive experience as possible, and try not to change their routines as much as possible. In some cases, kids are moving to another neighborhood, another state, another school, which is much more dramatic and difficult than if you're keeping a house in the same neighborhood or two homes in the same neighborhood, and the kids are continuing to live near their friends and near their schools. Right. So try your best to not make the situation as shifting as possible and different as possible. The less the kids have to struggle with new and changes, the easier it is for them.
That's a really good suggestion, to keep things as normal as possible. Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many things to unpack there. Just having. Something came into my mind as you were sharing how, not fighting in front of the kids, but if they do fight, do you think that it's appropriate then for the parents to kind of apologize or make up in front of the kids then too, instead of leaving it as something they fought in front of them, but then there was no resolution?
Well, you said some very important things there. One is that parents should be able to apologize to the children when they realize they made a mistake, that they did something that wasn't in the kids' best interest, such as fighting around the kids, because it's no matter what. So if you could look them in the eye and say, I made a big mistake, or mom and dad made a big mistake. We shouldn't have been fighting around you, and I apologize for that. One, it lets kids know that you can make a mistake and you can own it. And that's a lesson for them, gives them permission to own mistakes they make. So it's positive parenting for them. And then it takes them off the hook. It lets them realize that my parents aren't perfect. We all make mistakes, and it's forgivable. So that's very important. So yes, we're all going to catch ourselves doing something we regret as parents.
Right.
So apologizing to the kids, and then apologizing to one another as parents who are divorcing. You have to understand that your relationship with your ex is not through the divorce. It's a lifetime relationship. Co-parenting doesn't end when the divorce ends. Co-parenting just begins, and you're going to be co-parenting for decades ahead. And hopefully experiencing the happy times in life that families experience. There's going to be birthdays and school events and graduations and weddings and grandchildren and all of those things ahead. And so you don't want to embarrass your children and humiliate them by acting out and misbehaving with one another. It's shameful when parents do that. You want to make life as easy as possible for the kids you love. Do the best you can. Be mature and be responsible. And your kids will thank you when they're grown adults. I have to tell you a personal story. Everyone feels insecure after a divorce. Did I screw my kids up? Did I make terrible mistakes? And one day, my son was 11 when I divorced. One day when he was in his early 20s, he came to me out of the blue and he said, Mom, you and Daddy did a really good job with the divorce, and I just want to thank you, because most of my friends whose parents divorced, either hate their parents or are very angry at them. And I think you guys were great. And I just let out such a
Wow.
sigh of relief because they're holding into so much guilt and
Yeah.
insecurity about it. And that was the catalyst. That's when I realized that I had a lot that I could share with other parents. And that
Yeah.
the pivotal moment when I founded the Child Centered Divorce Network and became a divorce and co-parenting coach and wrote How Do I Tell the Kids About the Divorce and several of the other courses and programs that I created. It was only after he was a grown adult and came
Yeah.
to me today.
No, that must have been so awesome to hear. I can only imagine like the turmoil that's going on inside, just hoping that you didn't mess up your kids. It's interesting in our family, we have one set of we both have siblings, my husband and I, as I mentioned, one set of divorced parents have still hate each other, still can't even be in the same room, still can't even like communicate properly, and are always trying to like do things to mess each other up. And this is like years later. And then the
Wow.
other side of it, like they go to all the sports games together, they go to family dinners together, they do things as like, they've moved on and got married and like, but it's still, they're all part of the family still. Like it's very interesting, seeing two very different ways of things continuing on. And it's like, oh my gosh, like if those other parents could just like get out of their own egos and out of their own things and just, I'm going to send them to your course.
There you go. You said it so well because that's really what it is. It's getting out of your ego and putting the kids first. That's what the
Yeah.
Child Centered Divorce Network is all about. And it makes a huge difference. Your kids will thank you when they're grown adults, or they'll be very resentful and hold you responsible for the pain that you cause them unnecessarily. Because
Yeah.
it's not the divorce per se that messes kids up. It's how parents handle the divorce. And so
Well,
we
yeah.
have the responsibility and the ability to do a better job.
And I can hear in some of the things that the kids are saying that it's coming from the other parents,
Right.
dislike or problems within like so, and then it doesn't help the other parent when they're trying to parent, right? Because then
Of
it's like,
course.
oh, but this how so it just gets very complicated and very yeah, it's really challenging.
And it's unnecessary because the more amicable and cooperative co-parents can be, the easier it is for everyone, especially the co-parents, because there's always going to be times when someone gets sick, there's an accident, something at work happens, and you have to let your co-parent know, I'm going to be 2 hours late, or can
Right.
we Saturday night this week for you take Saturday night next week? Whatever the situation is, the more you cooperate, the better off the kids are, and the better off your life is. When you're bumping each other all the time, there's more tension and conflict and stress and illness for everyone in the family, and it's not necessary to do that. That's the important message.
Yeah, absolutely. And such an important message. And have you noticed like would you say like the divorce rates have gone up over the last 5 years, or is it kind of stayed consistent?
Well, what's happened is that marriage has lowered. There's been less marriages. So
Mhm.
relationships are breaking up as much as ever before.
Okay,
It's
so not
that
anymore.
divorce,
Yeah.
yes, the divorce rate per se, because divorces only account for marriages. People
Mhm.
who are living together for 5 years and then breaking up, the kids are still dealing with that. It's just
Mhm.
that it's not in the statistics. So the situation is that divorces just continue, or breakups and continue, and the statistics may shift and change depending on whether people are married or not. But the important thing is that they're aware that they have options and choices. And if you love your children and
Mhm.
you want to do what's best for them, put them first. And fortunately, there are ways of doing that. And of course, if you have a coach, they can handle the specific issues that are creating the most tension and stress in everyone's life and help you find other solutions that are more benign and reflective of you as a loving parent.
Yeah, that seems to be like a much better way of going about it. Did you hear this week in world news in Indonesia? They've now made it a law. It's illegal to live together or even have any physical activity together if you're not married. Like,
I have
that's so
things
crazy.
that, yes, yes. Yeah, yeah, as if you could really change people's behaviors by legislating crazy things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now it's a government thing.
Yeah, that's very bad.
So funny. Now, you also host the podcast called Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living radio show and podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so every week I interview experts in divorce and parenting because there's so many important perspectives. Sometimes I'm interviewing attorneys or mediators and talking about the legal facets of divorce. Sometimes I'm talking to divorce coaches or therapists talking about co-parenting and resolving conflict issues and dealing with the issues that children have who are divorced and acclimating, also grandparents. And then there's the side of the situation when you're out dating again and looking for new relationship partners. So I talk to people who are experts in that regard, because when you're a parent and you're dating again, it's
that's all different. Yeah.
Single, yes, you have to protect again your innocent children, and you don't want to make the same mistake you made again. There are people, as you know, who are divorce and marry and divorce and marry, and they just do it again and again, and that's ridiculous because they never took the time to understand the dynamics of what makes a healthy relationship. So I try to help people through the podcast and through my own coaching to understand that everything is about choices and decisions that we make. So we have to look within for answers. And when we do, we get much more insight so that we can avoid repeating mistakes. When you repeat mistakes, that's insanity.
Right. And it's interesting because I bet, oh my gosh, just dating past divorce, dating. And then like that whole thing, like when do you introduce your kids to that person? And like, that is like a whole other crazy part of dating. When you have kids, that it's not there when you're single and without kids, right? Like that adds a whole other layer of complexity.
It's very complicated, and the blended family can be very complicated. It's extremely challenging, and fortunately, there are strategies and steps that one can take for dating and for blending families and all of that. But you have to be very mindful. You have to really be consciously aware. Put yourself in your children's shoes and see the world from their perspective, because I think too often parents don't do that. And there's a difference between a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old on so many levels. And what are the children thinking? What are they making these situations mean to them in their life? Right. So you want to, as a parent, you want to, especially when a divorce is involved, you want to be talking to your kids, communicating with them, finding out what they're feeling, because sometimes they just make mistakes or they believe things that aren't true, especially blaming themselves, which happens no matter what age the kids are. You think older kids would know better, but they don't. Right. And a child can say, maybe if I didn't get D's on my report card, my parents wouldn't be divorcing. Maybe if I wasn't fighting with my younger brother, they wouldn't be divorcing. And of course, children are never the cause of the breakup. It's marital problems in the relationship. It's never the children's fault, but children don't know that. And so it's so important that parents always reaffirm with them that they're not to blame, that they're innocent, that none of this is their fault. And also, I always want to remind parents to tell children that we are a family and we will always be a family. So this change in the form of our family, we may be now living in 2 houses so everyone gets along better, but we are still a family. And even when new relationship partners come into the picture, it doesn't mean that we're not a family. Mom and dad will always be your mom, and dad will always love you, or whoever the parents are will always be your parents, will always love you. And then we can expand and have other people come into the picture who love you too. Right. And that's positive.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Oh my gosh, so many great tips. Rosalind, thank you so much for being with us here today. And for our parents out there that are feeling like you need a little bit more information, a little bit more support, Rosalind is a wealth of information between anger management programs, co-parenting programs, her book. I love that idea of storybook, of like sharing the news in the way that she has created in this book. And also, you can head on over to her podcast, Divorce, Dating, and Empowered Living radio show and podcast. But on top of that, you have a gift for us today too, Rosalind, don't you?
I do, yes. It's Post-Divorce Parenting Success Strategies for Getting It Right. It's an ebook, and it's right on the homepage of my website, childcentereddivorce.com. Just enter your email address, and it's available for instant download.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we put that in the show notes too. Thank you so much, Rosalind, for doing what you do. It's such important work that you're up to. And thank goodness that there's a resource like you out there for our parents who are struggling right now. So thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, blissful parents, go out there and have a fabulous week. Remember, be blissful, and your week is yours. So go out there and have some fun, and make sure you check out Rosalind's podcast if you're struggling right now. Until next time, see you later.